Coming up now is Fynn Fabry, and they have a wonderful talk entitled Boring Solutions Are Your Friend in Infosec and Painting. Take it away, Fynn.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction and thank you for having me. As the title already suggests, we're going to talk about boring solutions today, which doesn't mean that the solutions are necessarily going to be, all easygoing and everything, but they are considered quite boring, and you will soon see why. First, let me take away my headphones because now I just have to speak and don't have to listen, and then we can give it a go. I will start with the introduction of our acting character in this one, or the first acting character of several, to demonstrate a little with an everyday example. I'm a bit hesitant to call it everyday, but it was everyday for the last 2 years. We are going to start with me clicking on the wrong screen. With our favorite tech bro. I'm pretty sure you all know or have an idea in your mind what I mean when I say tech bro. And if you don't, please look at the slide here and imagine the type. Any resemblance of Iron Man is purely not based on the characteristic that they think they can save the world. And they did try, if you would like to remember with me together, about 2 or 3 years ago. A little issue started that is keeping us all kind of busy right now. And of course, our favorite tech bros, which do not represent the entire tech community, but just a certain type, decided that this is, again, their point to save the world. In this example, they decided collectively, or not collectively, but a lot of them cropped up in my timeline, and probably a lot of you have seen it as well, starting to engineer ventilators, like hospital ventilators. And this is a very noble goal. Like, hospital ventilators are an important thing, an important gadget to work with. But also, as it turned out pretty quickly, them engineering them didn't solve any problems for 2 reasons. One, they would have needed years to develop actual medical grade ventilators. And second, hospital staff didn't actually need an enormous amount of more ventilators. One thing that they probably would have needed, and they still need, is more staff, but you cannot easily engineer it. And another thing that they quickly brought up that people needed also outside of hospitals were face masks. And PPE was running in short supply at that point. So basically what they were saying again and again is, if you want to help out, go home and sew some masks. And in this little example, that is not part of tech in detail, but like, it just gives you an image of the issue. Sewing cloth masks was, by this demographic, the tech bros, considered to be very boring. Somebody else could do it. Somebody else could just do it, as they like to insist. But there is no just about that. It is a very important task. It is a task that does not require an enormous amount of skill, but some type of skill, and it requires people's time. And it just wasn't being done in the amount it would have been required. I mean, there were other things that they also could have done. They could have gone shopping for the elderly neighbors and everything, but they decided to focus on that thing that is, innovative and prestigious and interesting, and not on boring solutions that actually might have helped someone out. Now, in our everyday life, these people don't really go around trying to engineer things for hospitals on a day-to-day basis, but they do work for big corporations with basically the same mindset. I am going to go out there and save the world. Now, what does that look like? Again, we want interesting, fascinating solutions that are going to guarantee you fame and people looking up to you and being like, oh wow, what a man. Like, for example, currently, blockchain. If you are the guy who understands blockchain, you are probably going to get somewhere in your career, or can exchange this for several currently in style topics like artificial intelligence, NFTs, and what have you, whatever is going to be the next great fad. But the problem is, I yet have to encounter an issue that is resolved by blockchain. There are some issues that might be resolved by artificial intelligence, but let's burn that bridge when we get to it. So, our executive here is not very impressed because, yes, this is a very nice blockchain, but it's not solving my problem, or at least that is what we would be expecting to happen. What actually often happens is that in technology, the topic is hyped and everybody wants it, no matter how good it is for the problem. And the executive is going to be over the moon. But the actual and reasonable reaction would be to be kind of disappointed that this is your solution to cybersecurity risks, because it doesn't actually solve anything. The question is, what is the cloth masks and going shopping for elderlies in this situation? What could you actually do? And, well, might be boring. This is what we're going to talk about now. One of these things, from my experience with companies in varying sizes to the point of like international companies handling a lot of money, was an asset management database or a computer management database. Now, when I talked about that to some friends, when I started working with companies like that, they were like, but aren't you a consultant for cybersecurity? Wouldn't you be looking for vulnerabilities or something? Isn't this like not a security topic, but more like a general IT topic? And, oh, sorry, I keep clicking. And basically, they are not wrong. But the problem at hand is that a lot of companies do not have such databases, or matter of fact, they have several of them. And these databases contain conflicting information. If you take a closer look, they do not actually contain all the assets that they have. They contain assets that they had 10 years ago, but that that are gone now. So basically, they somehow have this thing, but maintaining it, cleaning it up in the first place, or maybe even establishing it, if that's not a thing right now, is a lot of work to do. And unfortunately for our dear Tech Bro, this work is not very prestigious and shiny and innovative. CMDBs are tried and tested technology. It's a database that contains data. The important part and the artistic part and the part that is actually worth your money is the part where you aggregate and sort and update the data that is in the database. But this, again, is not a very innovative and very prestigious task to do, right? But assuming that our good friend here actually wants to help out, I guess he's going to have to acquire some other skills than building a blockchain. So let's take a quick look at the skills that you might need for this. Network knowledge, by which I mean network as in computer networks. Like networks consist not only of laptops that you stick to a networking cable, but they consist of a lot of things. There are routers, there are switches, there are servers, there are end products, what have you. There's a lot of stuff in there. You have to know how to handle it, how to handle all the protocols. And for this job of keeping a CMDB updated or aggregating all the data, you don't have to be the networking guru that could just bootstrap a company-wide network. But you should have heard about how things connect together. So, basic networking knowledge. Networking in the sense of talking to people, because the assets that you are trying to catalog are run, created, and dismantled by people. So, interacting with them is kind of a necessity. There will always be situations, even if you have a good process in place, where you will find out somebody's not playing playing along the book. Somebody's doing something else. You have to find out why to prevent this in the future. Or you have to find out why somebody decided to put wrong things into the database or whatnot. You have to talk to people because they are running the assets that you need to secure. Then some kind of bookkeeping, in the sense that you have to check regularly that your update processes and everything is working, and that your database is actually functioning. And last but not least, something that I did a lot in that phase of my career, sorting and analyzing data, especially really badly structured data, because there's going to be a lot of it. It probably contains most of the information that you need, but it's not in any shape that you could just dump it in a database and call it a day. It's just badly structured, full of errors, unescaped signs. You get things with different formats from different sites and have to aggregate them into one cohesive database. So if this is a profile where you see yourself as, oh, wow, that sounds like something I could do or that I would want to do, yeah, this is something that is currently not being done because a lot of people in cybersecurity consider this a very, very boring solution. Well, assuming you do not think that way and you are still offering blockchains to disappointed executives, what else might they be disappointed about? Well, that your blockchain is not a vulnerability management tool. Maybe you could in some way include blockchain in vulnerability management, and probably someone's doing that, but also probably that system they are building is not going to solve any issues soon. So let's rather take a look at the things with which you could actually help with vulnerability management in medium to large sized companies. One skill is tracking, which is not actually a huge skill set that you need. It is a skill set that you need, but it's not that huge. And the readiness to just stick to it, to just keep going, keep tracking the things and keep looking at the points where things are not progressing. Again, talking to people. Oh, well, the vulnerabilities that you are tracking are on systems that, again, are run by people. And these people are not usually neglecting updates, patches, and configurations out of malicious intent. They are doing this for various reasons. And if you want to do vulnerability management in a way that actually makes things better, you have to understand those reasons and try to either enable the people to work on it despite these reasons existing, or to find ways in which they don't have to deal with these issues. So this is a lot more than the idea of I'm going to do a pen test and then dump all of it into a database that collects vulnerabilities and then people are going to fix it, right? Which is something I have seen a lot of people say. And this is just not how vulnerabilities get fixed. This is how they get collected in a database to rot. Well, the next thing ties into that talking to people, actually the next two things, prioritizing and looking up solutions, because I have talked to a lot of people who seemed completely stunned by the amount of work that they had to do in maintaining systems. And then on top of that, they got the output of some vulnerability scanner. And it just said, look, here are these glaring red problems with your system. You have to fix them all. And well, what can I say? It didn't get fixed. And then I did something. It felt to me like a task that is not even worth anything, because it was like just looking at these outputs of the vulnerability scanner and then sending out these issues with instructions to fix them that I basically wrote out of some tech tutorial on YouTube and put this in an email and sent this to the person responsible for this system. And later I got feedback from them that this was a really valuable service to them, because I took the prioritizing and the overwhelming amount of information that they had to process in order to find out how to patch and chunked it down into one email for them to just follow along. And even if in the process of that patching, they realized that the patching was actually a little bit more complex than what I wrote down, they were at the task now, and they were at that one task that they had to do. So they said this was an immense help, while other people, especially people in cybersecurity, were like, but that's not even a task, right? Well, it is, and it is one that is worthwhile. And then I put down there finding vulnerabilities in brackets, because this is the one thing that we got down. And this is, well, sometimes it's boring and sometimes it's exciting and fun. But anyway, this is the point where you don't have to argue with people in cybersecurity that this has to be done. They are pretty much on top of that. That's pen testing. Everybody agrees pen testing and red teaming and vulnerability scanners are a good thing. But telling people how to patch their stuff apparently is not. Okay, again, you are still trying to impress the executive with shiny golden blockchain, but they are still disappointed because it's not vulnerability management, not asset management, and it's not a tool to raise awareness. Raising awareness is something, if you tell that to somebody from cybersecurity, from the technical part of cybersecurity, very often you get people looking down at you like, excuse me, this is the social issue. We don't deal with social here. This is a human issue. But looking at reports of how the social issue is a big one. The FBI in some reports suggested that probably a quarter to a third of yearly successful attacks on companies, I presume in the US, they didn't say that, but I presume they measured it in the US, were initiated by phishing or similar kinds of social engineering. So the problem was people. And we cannot put that problem aside by just saying, oh, well, then they have to behave more secure. Because guess what? If you say that, they are not going to change anything. Behave more securely is not an instruction, especially not for someone whose primary field of work is not cybersecurity, but anything else. So this is actually a task that we have to be aware of and that we have to take care of, we as people who know about cybersecurity. But what kind of skills do we need there? It might come as an absolute surprise to you, but the probably most important part is talking to people, because you have to make these people understand what the issue is and why this issue is important. Then we have more skills that basically tie into talking to people. You need empathy. If you do any of the previous tasks I talked about and you don't really have a lot of empathy, that's okay. You're talking to people about technology. Here you are talking to people about their behavior as humans. So you need empathy, first off, in order to understand their problems that you want to work out with them. And second, to talk to them in a way that they actually listen to you. If they feel like you're condescending them, or if they don't understand a word of what you're saying because you're far too technical, it's not going to reach anyone and it's not going to do any good. So you need empathy, you need presentation skills, which is a conglomerate of squishy skills. Again, a thing that cybersecurity communities don't really like to work with on a large, like a lot of them don't like to work with it. There is a growing group of people who like to work with it, and this is great. But a lot of people are like, I don't know. This is not a web server. Gotta stay clear of it. But yeah, presentation skills. Things like talking fluently, preparing material that people stay focused on. How even works focus? Do you know how focus works? If you want to give a presentation, better think about it. Design as part of presentations, but also as part of, for example, if you want to design a handout, or if you want to design a poster or a website that informs people about things that are important. And last but not least, you should know about social engineering. There are some minor technical security loopholes that you also should know about, but mainly if you want to raise awareness for cybersecurity, social engineering is something that you want to at least theoretically know about, because this is what is going to help you to tell people what the danger is, where the danger is coming from. So we have 3 things now that you can help big companies with. And I can promise you that they are going to appreciate it. There are some medium and small-sized companies that are not going to appreciate it, because all of these 3 topics have one in common. They are a lot of work and they have to pay for that work. But in the last 2 years, I have seen a constantly growing awareness in companies that this is actually an important thing to do, and that this is something that they have to pay money and other resources on to fix it. So if you are maybe in the situation that you think is cybersecurity a place for me to work in? And you were so far scared by people telling you that you can't because you are not technical enough and you don't know enough about hacking. Yes, screw that. Here are some options. There are more, but here are some options how, when having a minimum amount of knowledge of, the hard security practices, you can make a significant improvement to the cybersecurity of a company. This was the part about cybersecurity. I have to quickly change my setup a bit. So I am going to give you a standby screen because I have to shift the camera and I don't want you to get motion sickness. Oh wait, that doesn't actually block out the camera that I have to shift. Never mind then, I'm going to take over the camera and you have to deal with it. And then we are going to go to the art part of this talk. Because not really that surprisingly, the idea that you can do simple, well, non-complex things that are quite boring in order to improve your life is not limited to cybersecurity. So let's go over here and travel to my sketchbook. I have to adjust my camera so you still see my face. The most important part of, becoming an artist, sketchbook. Thank you to my technical support. I'm just going to work with this now. Yeah, the sketchbook. I'm pretty sure you have heard about the fact that pretty much any artist has one. This is mine, or rather my, I think, 7th or 8th sketchbook. 7th, that's what it says on the back. But let's get down to the issue that I want to talk about in art, which is the basic issue of art. Let's say you want to become an artist and you don't have what people call talent. A lot of people approach me and say they don't have talent, so they cannot become an artist. And oh yeah, it's focused, good. But talent is kind of overrated. Maybe you have heard that said a lot before. But today we're going to talk about what you can do instead of talent. So our overarching issue here is you want to paint pictures, but you can't. First question is, why can't you? And there are 2 factors that I want to focus on today and show you how to eliminate these factors. Factor number 1 is your hands, because we tend to think that our hands can do what we want them to do just because we think about it. And in many aspects, that's right. If you are a skilled cook, your hands can cut up everything that you want to cut real quick and stuff like that, but you didn't get there without practicing. And in art, we can do the same. So the first thing that you want to do in schooling your hand how to work as an artist's hand is, if you want to try that with me now, grab a piece of paper and do it, you want to draw a line. And then you want to do that again. And again. And basically, you just keep doing this. This is your first boring thing that you can do if you want to create art, draw lines. When you have made a lot of lines, and in the long run, I guess you want to make something like, a few 100 to 1,000 lines, just lines, not incorporated in images, just lines. You can start trying to do something else that is fun, which is, you see that line here, the lowest one, I want to trace that again. And as you see, I have made some wobbles below, but overall, I pretty much hit the line here. I made a little wobble up there, and then you do that, and you do that again until you have a line that is so thick that you don't even see anymore when you're wobbling around, and then you start with the next one. As you can also see, I am not moving my wrist here. This is something that you can read in theory on how to move your hands and your pen. So just a quick thing. If I try to do lines like this, the amount of straight line that I can do is very limited because I can only move my wrist and fingers so far. So what you want to do is draw from the elbow or from the shoulder, preferably from the shoulder. Do as much from the shoulder as you can. So just move your entire arm. I am saying just like this is an easy task. If you're just starting out, it's not. And this is your first boring task. Do a lot of lines. Trying this, actually trying it on paper, is going to show you that this is boring, but probably needed if you have never drawn before. And when you're done with these, you can also try to do a wavy line and then trace that. As you see, I just completely went off the bat here, because you don't just have images consisting of straight lines, you have images consisting of all kinds of lines. So you want to be able to do the line in the shape that you want, where you want it. Otherwise, you have a beautiful picture in your hand, and you need that picture to contain, I don't know, a triangle. And this is the triangle that you imagined, but what you actually end up with is this. This isn't going to get you anywhere, no matter of the rest of your skills and your imagination. So you do this, you do wavy lines, you do circles, triangles, whatever, boxes. And this is training your hand to do what you want. The other thing that follows after that is trying to do gradients with whatever medium you are going to use. In this case, I have a pencil, but maybe you want to use liners, markers, acrylic or oil paint. And of course, you can do a very dark streak with a pencil, you can do a very light streak with a pencil. And then you try to make a smooth gradient from one end to the other. And at the beginning, you're going to see that the shift from very, very dark to somewhat dark is pretty quick. And then you have a slow shift where it always goes lighter, which is not that good because I haven't practiced that much gradients in recent times. So this gradient is okay-ish, but it's not very even. So this is another thing you can do. This teaches you how to control the pressure that you exert onto the paper. And this, of course, differs from every medium to another. But the more you practice this with different media, the easier it's going to get for you with the next, because there's also something in your head, in your mind that you practice with that. And of course, in your vision. And basically, that brings us to the next thing. We now have talked about your hand, trying to make even shapes, trying to end up drawing again where you wanted to draw, or not in that case. And this is nice. So lines now end up where you want them. But the next thing that you will see, if you actually care to observe it, is that you also have to train your eyes. I would like to point at my eyes now, but I am working on limited tech here. So you want to train your eyes to actually see what is around you. Now, that sounds kind of dumb because, of course, you see what is around you, but you don't, probably. There are some people who do, but mostly only if they have worked with painting or photography or something like that. And a nice experiment that somebody did on that was they told people to draw a bike, like a regular old bicycle, and people should draw it abstract and minimal as they want it. And a very common, like, the results were not as uniform as you would imagine them to be, because we all ride similar bikes, but they had some common factors. Like, for example, they all had two tires, two wheels. Then another thing that was pretty common was there is a saddle. And the saddle very often was here above the hind wheel. Then we had a handlebar that was above the front wheel, something like that. And we need a connection between these. And sometimes the paddles were here, or sometimes they were here. We're going to go with here. And then you need connections. You have something like this. And then probably something like this, because bikes have something triangular, right? And if you now draw up a pull up a picture of a bike somewhere on the internet, you will see that this is absolutely wrong. The only thing that is correct here is that the parts are there, but and the wheels are on the same height. That's basically it. And the pedals are between the wheels, but sometimes the pedals in the drawings actually were here. When you now look at bikes, like if you went outside now and would look at a bike, because I primed you like that to look at it, then you would see that actually you have a hind wheel, you have a front wheel, the handlebar is kind of here, but also like a little more here. It's not above the middle of the wheel, but a bit above the wheel. And then you have this swoopy thing that connects it to the wheel. I'm sorry. Then you have the saddle. The saddle is not at all above the hind wheel. It's maybe a little bit above here. And then the connection to the hind wheel is like this. And you have a connection like this. The pedals are actually here. That's right. And then you have something like that and something like that. And some kind of connection between the saddle and the handlebar, either like this, if it's a bike for people who have issues with raising their legs very far, or for more sportive bikes, it's probably here. And sometimes you have something to put luggage on here, or maybe you have a kind of basket here. But basically this is much closer to a bike than this. But this is something a lot of people drew because they don't really look at bikes. And why would they? They don't need it. This is not flaming them for being stupid. They just take in information that is important to them. And the fact that the saddle is not above the hind wheel, but here, is not really important to their everyday lives. And this is just one example. You walk through your life not seeing things, or rather interpreting them in this way when they are like this. But when you start to draw, you have to get rid of this. You have to learn how to actually look at things, which is what I mean when I say you have to school your eyes. So again, with the boring things, this is a little less than just boring, a little less boring than just drawing straight lines. This is a bit more exciting, which is you start drawing things that you see. And please do yourself a favor. Don't take the most exciting things. Start with simple and so-called boring things. One nice thing I found is an apple. If I tell you to draw an apple, you would probably end up with something close to, well, that's a bit pointy here. Let's start that again. Better. Something like this. And then you would throw in a stem. And the rest of the flower here, that is always sitting around there. And you look at an actual apple, and again, you see that the actual apple looks very different, because if you look at it from the side, you don't see that dip here. That dip definitely exists, it's there. But if you look at it from the side, you just see this continuous line here. You hardly see anything of the dip, same here. But if you draw it like that, just in a comic where you only have the outlines, it's harder to recognize. This is why you see apples painted like this very often, because with the dip here, it's clearly recognized as an apple. And it's much more characteristic. If I just draw this as a almost circle, it could also be a pomegranate, I guess. But this, like actually looking at it and then going from there to the point where you stylize it, for example, by putting the dip here, this is an entire arch of looking at things and learning how to draw them. So you start out by looking at the thing that is sitting in front of you and drawing it the way that you see it. So an apple would really be more like this. And this is, again, this is harder to recognize as an apple because the other aspects help you, but you first want to actually make sure that you see the world the way it looks. Now you have that down. You can go the entire road again with color. So far, I'm just doing pencil sketches. You can start shading. This is all stuff that you just have to do a lot. So this is, again, the boring part. You have to draw a lot of these simple images. You have to shade them in very simple ways, and do yourself a favor and don't spend an enormous amount of time on them.
Hey, Fynn, fantastic sketch here. I know the technical difficulties kind of bled us into the to time there. Unfortunately, I don't have time to ask you any questions, but I did want to thank you so much for joining and giving us a wonderful talk on boring solutions and kind of practicing those fundamentals and making those a big part of your InfoSec solutions, as well as the wonderful drawing skills here. I noticed wonderful drawings and painting on your slides. I think there were some questions about how in the world you painted those and things like that. So maybe jump in the chat or give us some info about that. We can pop into the chat because some folks were really wanting to know how you did that, what you used. So, but thank you so much for coming on to PancakesCon and sharing with us your knowledge and your skills.
Sure. Thank you for having me. I will definitely be around in the chat for questions. Other than that, you can find me on Twitter as shark_general. And thank you for listening. I hope you had a great time and have fun with all the commencing talks at this con.